This is an optional chapter. If you don't want to study this, you can study the alternative chapter, that is the age of industrialization. Both of them deal the same concepts, but this chapter is relatively easy. When we talk of globalization, we often refer to an economic system that has emerged since the last 50 years. But you will see in this chapter the making of the global world has a long history of trade, migration of people in search of work, the movement of capital, and much else. As we think about the dramatic and visible signs of global interconnectedness in our lives today, we need to understand the phases through which the world in which we live has emerged. Now, all through history, human societies have become steadily more interlinked from ancient times. Travelers, traders, priests, pilgrims traveled vast distances for knowledge, opportunity, and spiritual fulfillment, or to escape persecution. They carried goods, money, values, skills, ideas, inventions, and even germs and diseases. As early as 3000 BC, an active coastal trade linked the Indus Valley civilization with present day West Asia. For more than a millennia, cowries, cowries or seashells was used as a form of currency. Right. This is for 1 mark. You should remember about what is a cowrie or a cowdy. Now, from the Maldives found their way to China and East Africa, the long distance spread of disease carrying germs may be traced as far back as the 7th century. By the 13th century, it had become an unmistakable link. Obviously, that link is called as the Silk Route. This is the route where there was a trade route connecting the Indus Valley civilization with present day West Asia. Right. Let's move on. What is a Silk Route? The Silk Route are a good example of vibrant pre-modern trade and cultural links between distant parts of the world. The name silk points to the importance of westbound Chinese silk cargoes along this route. Historians have identified several silk routes over land, by sea, knitting together the vast regions of Asia with Europe and Northern Africa. They are known to have existed since before the Christian era and thrived almost till the 15th century. Chinese pottery also traveled the same route, as did the textiles, spices from India and Southeast Asia. In return, what we got was precious metals, gold and silver, flowed from Europe to Asia. Now, historians have identified silk routes. Remember this, it's by land or sea: Asia, Europe, and Africa. Chinese pottery travel, textiles and spices traveled, and vice versa. We returned, we got gold and silver. Now, trade and cultural exchange always went hand in hand. Early Christian missionaries almost certainly traveled this route to Asia, as did early Muslim preachers a few centuries later. Much before all this, Buddhism emerged from East India and spread in several directions through intersecting points on the Silk routes. Not only the commodities, but the ideas also spread, like Buddhism. I gave an example. You can see the route here, the Silk Route trains, the Trans Siberian Railway, you can see in the blue, and the connecting train routes in red. This used to exist like this. These are the routes obviously by land, and these are the routes by sea. Now, I told you it's not only the commodities that got exchanged. It is food also. Food offers many examples of long distance cultural exchange. Traders and travelers introduced new crops to the lands they traveled. Even ready food stuff in distant parts of the world might share common origins. Take spaghetti and noodles, for example. It is believed that noodles traveled west from China to become spaghetti, or perhaps Arab traders took pasta to 5th century Sicily, that's in Italy. Now, similar foods were also known in India and Japan. Many of our common food, such as potatoes, soya, groundnuts, maize, tomatoes, chilies, sweet potatoes, were not known to our ancestors until about 5 centuries ago. These foods were only introduced in Europe and Asia after Christopher Columbus accidentally discovered the vast continent that would later become known as the Americas. Now, here, America is used to explain North America, South America, and the Caribbean. In fact, many of our common foods come from America's original inhabitants, that is, the American Indians. Now, sometimes the new crops could make the difference between life and death. Europe's poor began to eat better and live longer with the introduction of the humble potato. Europe being a very large continent where people were in large number and they needed something. So potato served as one alternative, and they all began to live longer with the introduction of potato. Ireland's poorest peasants become so independent on potato when the disease struck potato in mid 1840. Hundreds of thousands died because of starvation. This is the one. Sometimes the new crops could make the differences between life and death. Europe's poor began to eat. The example is the Ireland. The Ireland poor peasants who were so dependent that when the potato got disease, thousands died of starvation. Let's move on to the next one, that is conquest, disease, and trade. The pre modern world shrank greatly in the 16th century after European sailors found a sea route to Asia and also successfully crossed the Western Ocean to America. Europeans started to find sea routes to other continents. They found to Asia and to America. Now, for centuries before, the Indian Ocean had known for a bustling trade. It was very busy with goods, people, knowledge, customs crisscrossing its water. The Indian subcontinent was central to these flows and a crucial point in their networks. Now, the entry of the Europeans helped expand or redirect some of these flows towards Europe. So, when the Europeans came here, obviously the trade they wanted to head it back to Europe. Before its discovery, America had been cut off from the regular contact with the rest of the world for millions of years. But from the 16th century, its vast lands and abundant crops and minerals began to transform trade and lives everywhere. America, right? Now, precious metals, particularly silver from mines located in present day Peru and Mexico, also enhanced Europe's wealth and financed its trade with Asia. Legends spread in 17th century about South America's fabled wealth. So many set off the expeditions to search for that fabled city of gold, also called as El Dorado. Now, with it, it was germs such as smallpox that they carried on their person because of their long isolation. America's original inhabitants had no immunity against these diseases that came from Europe. European conquest was not just a result of superior firepower, they took biological weapon also like smallpox. Now, it was the germs such as smallpox that they carried on their person because of their long isolation, where the Americans have no immunity to that disease because they are very new to it. Smallpox in particular proved a deadly killer. Now, what happened here was the Portuguese and the Spanish conquest and colonization of America was decisively underway by the mid 16th century. European conquest was not just firepower, they carried the germ as well. It was the germ that they carried because of the non immunity of Americans. Once they introduced it, it spread deep into the continent ahead even of any Europeans reaching there. It killed and decimated whole communities, paving the way for conquest. So, normally the Europeans would not use any gun. Guns could be bought or captured and turned against the invaders, but diseases such as smallpox, to which the conquerors were mostly immune. Now, this can also be called as biological warfare, right? You can see in the box that biological warfare, the first governor of Massachusetts Bay Colony in the New England, wrote in May 1634, that is John Winthrop, that smallpox signaled God's blessing for the colonists. He thought smallpox. Now, until the 19th century, poverty and hunger were common in Europe. Cities were crowded and deadly diseases were widespread. Religious conflicts were common, and religious dissenters, those who did not believe in religion or who criticized the church, were persecuted. Thousands therefore fled Europe for America. Here by the 18th century, plantations worked by slaves captured in Africa were growing cotton and sugar for European markets. So until well into 18th century, China and India were among the world's richest countries. They were also preeminent in Asian trade. However, from the 15th century, China is said to have restricted overseas contacts and retreated into isolation. They did not do trade with any other country. China's reduced role and the rising importance of the America gradually moved the center of the world towards westwards, that is Europe. Now Europe now emerged as the center of world trade. Yeah, this I have already explained. They set off expeditions for search of wealth. El Dorado is one such fabled city. This also I explained already. Poverty and hunger were common. Cities were crowded. Disease was widespread. So everybody wanted to escape from it. They came to America where they started to work in plantations. There were slaves captured in Africa who were growing cotton and sugar for the European market. Suddenly, the importance of China and India became lesser, and the market took its turn or became prominent in Europe. So suddenly, Europe emerged as the center of world trade. Now, when you have obviously the plantation, you will need workers. So slaves were captured from Africa. Slaves were captured, slaves were bought from Africa, slaves for sale, New Orleans. You can see a picture here, that an advertisement. What happened in the 19th century was the world changed profoundly in the 19th century. Economists identify three types of movement or flows. It's quite important for 3 marks. This chapter you can expect a 3 mark answers and questions. Flows, three type of flow. The first is the flow of trade. Cloth and wheat were the first ones to be traded. So we can say it was about flow of trade. The second one was flow of labor, because I told you people were searching for jobs, migration of people in search of employment. Third one is movement of capital for short term or long term investment. Now prosperity suddenly was in investing money. So the capital, here you can take the capital as money. So the investment became short term or long term. Over long distance also people started to invest. That is how the flow of trade, flow of labor, and flow of capital happened. Now the world economy takes shape. Now, good place to start is the changing pattern of food production and consumption. Traditionally, countries like to be self-sufficient in food, but in 19th century Britain, self-sufficiency in food meant lower living standards and social conflict. Why? Because the population is too great. Population growth from the late 18th century had increased the demand for food grains in Britain. As urban centers expanded, industry grew, demand for agriculture products went up, pushing uh, the production, pushing the food grain prices. Under pressure from landed groups, the government also restricted the import of corn. Government did not import corn, it restricted the import of corn, and the laws that the government made are called as corn law. This is probably the most important one. Corn law, important. What is corn law? Laws allowing the government to restrict the import of corn. Unhappy with the high food prices, industrialists and urban dwellers forced the abolition of the corn law. So, after the corn law was scrapped, food could be imported into Britain more cheaply than it could be produced within the country. British agriculture was unable to compete with imports. Vast areas of land were now left uncultivated. Thousands of men and women were thrown out of work. They flocked to the cities for or migrated overseas. They were looking for outside work. Now, what happened was, as the food prices fell, consumption in Britain rose from the mid 19th century. Faster industrial growth in Britain also led to higher incomes, therefore, more food imports. Around the world in Eastern Europe, Russia, America, and Australia, lands were cleared and food production started to expand to meet the British demand of wheat or corn. It was not enough merely to clear lands for agriculture. It's not only the land that you need railways, you need transportation, right? So railways were needed to link the agriculture regions to the port. New harbors had to be built, and the old ones expanded to the new to ship the new cargo. People had to settle on the lands to bring them under cultivation. This meant that they had to build homes. In all these activities in turn required capital and labor, right? Capital flowed from financial centers such as London. The but labor was in short supply, as in America and Australia. So they actually wanted laborers from Africa. The corn law. Under pressure from the landed groups, the government also restricted the import of corn. I have explained it before, but I've taken it separately here because it's for 3 marks. So that is the corn law. After the corn law were scrapped, food could be imported into Britain more cheaply than it could be produced. So British agriculture was unable to compete with the imports. Now vast areas of land was now left uncultivated. Thousands of the men and women were thrown out of work. Now, what are the changes that happened? Now, suddenly, what happened was the global agricultural economy had taken shape, accompanied by complex changes in labor movement patterns, capital flow, ecologies, and technology. Food no longer came from a nearby village or town, but it came from thousands of miles away. It was not grown by a peasant tilling his own land, but by an agriculture worker, perhaps recently arrived, who was now working on a large farm only a generation ago had most likely been a forest. So you can say new. It was transported by railway, built for that very purpose, and by ships which were increasingly manned in these decades by low paid workers from southern Europe, Asia, Africa, and Caribbean. Some of the dramatic change, though on a smaller scale, occurred closer home in West Punjab also. The British Indian government built a network of irrigation canals to transform the semi desert waste semi-desert waste into fertile agriculture land that could grow wheat and cotton for export for the British government. They are popularly called as the canal colonies. So the areas irrigated by the new canals were called canal colonies, were settled by peasants from other parts of Punjab. Technology and cattle. Colonization stimulated new investments and improvements in transport. Faster railways happened, lighter wagons, larger ships helped food more cheaply and quickly from faraway farms to final market. The trade in meat offers a good example of this connected process. For example, what happened till this 1870 was the animals were shipped live from America to Europe and then slaughtered when they arrived there. Many animals also died in voyage, fell ill, lost weight, or became unfit to eat. So meat became an expensive luxury beyond the reach of a European poor because what was left was very less, right? High prices in turn kept demand and production down until the development of a new technology called refrigerated ships. What was done now was, I obviously know the refrigerated ships enables the transport of perishable food over long distance. What was done now was the food was carried. It was slaughtered and carried to Europe. It was slaughtered in America, carried as slaughtered. So when it is already slaughtered, when it reached Europe, it reached safely and the prices were not so high and people started enjoying it. So that is use of refrigerated ships, one example. Now the idea comes here about the colonialism. Now colonialism, you can see trade flourished. It is important to realize that there was a darker side to markets. In many parts of the world, the expansion of trade and a closer relationship with the world economy also meant a loss of freedom and livelihoods. So, with trade came colonialism. Late 19th century European conquest produced many painful economic, social, ecological changes. What happened was Britain and France made vast additions to their overseas territories. Belgium and Germany became new colonial powers. Remember, the World War One still did not happen. The US also became a colonial power in the late 1890s. Now you can see the picture here. You can see a picture of Africa. Now look at Africa. Africa itself looks like it has been owned by the European powers, and the native people are not there at all. Now, you will see some countries' borders run straight as if they were drawn using a ruler. Well, in fact, this was almost how rival European powers in Africa drew up the borders, demarcating their respective territories. In 1885, the big European powers met in Berlin to complete the carving up of Africa between them. So they carved up like this. So it is, you can say that colonialism on the economy changed the people also. Now we will move on to again one more important one, that is the Rinderpest. What is the Rinderpest? Rinderpest is cattle plague. In Africa in the 1890s, a fast spreading disease of cattle plague or Rinderpest had a terrifying impact on people's livelihood. What was done? This was a good example of the widespread European imperial impact on colonized societies, showing how disease can affect, even if it is affecting cattle, can shape the lives of people. Rinderpest arrived in Africa in late 1880. It was carried by infected cattle imported from British Asia to feed the Italian soldiers invading Eritrea in East Africa. Entering Africa in the east, Rinderpest moved like west forest fire, reaching Africa's Atlantic coast in 1892. Along the way, Rinderpest killed nearly 90% of the cattle. So the loss of cattle destroyed African livelihoods. Similar stories can be told about the impact of Western conquest on different parts of the world, where they have used just the disease, right? Now There is a severe problem here. I'll explain with this picture. If you remember, it's very good that you remember. Let's see. Now, what was it? Was in historically Africa had abundant land and relatively small population. For centuries, land and livestock sustained African livelihoods, and people rarely worked for a wage because they are already sustainable, right? Sustained. In late 19th century Africa, there were few consumer goods that wages could buy. If you had been an African possessing land and livestock, there was plenty of both. You too would have been little reason to work for a wage. Why would you work for a wage? You had land and cattle. So what happened in the late 19th century? Europeans were attracted to Europe due to its vast resource of land and minerals. Europeans came to Africa hoping to establish plantations and mines to produce crops and minerals for export to Europe. But there was an unexpected problem. What is the problem? Shortage of labor. No African is willing to work. Employers, that is, these colonizer people, used many methods to recruit and retain labor. Heavy taxes were imposed, which could be paid only by working for wages on plantations and mines. Now, that's the first one, heavy tax. Remember how inhuman are the Europeans, the colonizers, right? Heavy tax was imposed, which could be paid only using or only working for wage. Second one, inheritance law was changed. What is inheritance law? You can inherit your property from your father. It was changed so that peasants, what was done was peasants were displaced from land and only one member of a family was allowed to inherit. So as a result, what happens? The other are pushed into the labor market. Mine workers were also confined to compounds, not allowed to move freely, right? Now, mine workers, this was done. Now still they had their cattle, right? So what did they do? They brought out the rinderpest, and the rinderpest cattle plague nearly killed 90%. It arrived in 1880, nearly killed 90%. The loss of cattle destroyed the African livelihoods. Suddenly the planters, mine owners, colonial governments successfully monopolized what scarce cattle resources remained, strengthened their power, forced the Africans into the labor market, controlled the scarce resource of cattle, and subdued Africa. Look at how, from a large continent, they became subdued by the Europeans. Similarly, there are so many stories which we can tell about the colonization. Now, today it is enough, boys and girls. Now this is end of part 1. In the next class we are going to study about the laborers who went from different parts of the world, the indentured laborers, and why the world war happened, what was the impact, and in between the second world war and the first world war, the great depression also happened. We studied those in detail. Now till then, it's goodbye from me.